The Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to the Judeans who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are descendants of Abraham and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The son has a place there forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. There are more than a few one-liners peppered throughout the pages of the Bible, single verses plucked out for their pithy expression of some theological truth. And today we encounter one such one-liner. "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." The problem, of course, with one-liners, and this one in particular, is their tendency to lose all meaning and be reduced to some nice quote you might expect to find cross-stitched on a throw pillow. But these are words that we hear every year, year after year, on Reformation Sunday. And so what fresh perspective could I possibly have to offer on this text, or on the history of the Lutheran tradition we commemorate today? And on the cusp of the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, in which our church body is stressing unity with the Roman Catholic Church, is more talk of a divisive historical event really what we want to be about? Still, I do think that we need to be about the business of Reformation, lowercase r, but it probably won't look like the way we've always done it. Phyllis Tickle, who up until her death just over a year ago spent her life writing on religion and spirituality, has argued that the church goes through a major kind of reformation about once every 500 years. If you're doing the math in your head, that means that we're about due for another one. But I believe that we're living in the thick of it right now. Just last weekend, pastors and seminarians and theologians and lay people from across the country descended on my seminary in Chicago for a conference born out of a movement taking hold of parts of the ELCA. It's a movement that challenges our assumptions about what it means to be Lutheran, which for too long has meant being a part of a certain ethnic group or eating a certain type of food. It's a movement whose core ideology our presiding bishop, Elizabeth Eaton, writes about when she says, "It's not our culture and cuisine that define us, it's our theology." Now, that's not to say that Germanic or Scandinavian heritage shouldn't be celebrated, but beer and brats and lutefisk and Abelskiver are not what it means to be Lutheran. Nor do people of German and Scandinavian descent have a monopoly on defining what it means. And so in the midst of this movement, a modern-day Reformation, we have the opportunity to reclaim Lutheranism apart from the cultural trappings that have obscured its original message of the radical nature of God's grace. So maybe then it might be more helpful to look less to the Lutheran part of our identity and more to the evangelical part of our ELCA name. Now, I know that's another sermon entirely reclaiming that word, but at its core, it simply means of or relating to the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. And so we can return to Jesus' one-liner in John, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." But we're descendants of Abraham, We've never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free? But we're good Lutherans. We already know that we've been made free because Martin Luther said so. But the problem with the response the people give to Jesus in our gospel text is the same problem, I suspect, that happens with many Lutherans on Reformation Day. We appeal to our history, our status as a particular people, to suggest that we have it right and no one else. We are not in need of freedom or reformation anymore. But the church is always reforming. That's the whole point of the Reformation. And I think the moment that we think we have nothing new to say is the moment that we are most desperately in need of it. Jesus' response to the Judeans combats the notion that one's ancestry or ethnicity or even denominational affiliation determines one's need for freedom. Instead, he says, everyone who commits sin is in need of freedom. And as we hear in Paul's letter to the Romans, that really does mean everyone. Because sin, as Martin Luther himself has once described it, is the condition of being curved in on one's self. I've jokingly referred to Reformation Day as Lutheran Superiority Complex Day. Because we have a tendency to ascribe such great value to this one day, about this one historical event, at this one point in time, that we lose sight of why it was so radical. It was so radical because it awakened a whole people to the freedom given to us in Christ. It's a freedom unlike mere personal independence, but rather a freedom that sets us free from sin and all the ways that we become curved in on ourselves and self-absorbed, whether individually or institutionally. It's a freedom that ever draws us into closer relationship with God and with one another. It's a freedom that allows us to be the church that is always reforming and reimagining itself. On the last day of my first class in seminary, long before I ever heard about Augustana Lutheran Church, we watched this documentary, A Time for Burning. Maybe you've heard of it. But after it was over, I looked up this peculiar church in Omaha, Nebraska, to see if it was still around. Much to my surprise, the congregation that was once shook to its core by tension and controversy was now a vibrant, reconciling in Christ congregation with a woman pastor, a congregation I would learn 2 years later was intentionally looking for an LGBTQ intern. And now here we are in the midst of a time for building, a capital campaign driven by the need to update our facilities for a wide variety of ministries that call Augustana home every day of the week. This is what it means to be a church with its roots in the Reformation. That we can look fondly to our past and to our heritage, but without getting stuck in it. Boldly and prophetically looking to the future, being daily set free by the gospel to love and serve the world and the God who made it.